Arizona is eternally indebted to you for your service. So with that, would you please make a few remarks? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And, hey, thank you, Leo. I also want to thank President Trump for putting me here and for allowing me to live my dream of fighting to make America healthy again and doing that effectively. I was involved in the tobacco litigation back in the 1980s. The tobacco companies at that time were the most cash-rich companies in the world. And they saw the writing on the wall that they were facing regulatory headwinds, and that their consumer base was moving away from them. So they decided to diversify, and they decided to buy food companies. So by the mid-1990s, the two biggest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris. And they took thousands of scientists that they had employed to make tobacco more attractive and more addictive. And they moved them to do the same thing with food. And they began going into their laboratories and developing tastes and mimicked real food. And people eat those products today, and our bodies are not designed to metabolize them. And your body is seeking the nutrients that go along with that taste, but there are no nutrients. Our food today, it used to be nutrient dense. Today it's nutrient barren. And your body craves it. It's looking for the nutrients which it associates with those tastes. And that's why your body remains hungry all the time. And so you eat more and more, you gain more and more weight, and you're never satisfied. They also developed a whole slew of other chemicals. For example, they learned that one of the ways that your brain tells your stomach that it's full is it counts the number of times you chew. So they began adding softeners to the food to trick your brain into never being able to tell your stomach that it's full. And using this, many other chemicals, they poisoned our food supply in our country, and they made it, as I said, nutrient anemic. We're now the fourth most obese country in the world. And for the first time in history, we're seeing obesity and malnutrition in the same people. And Leo was talking about his trip to Europe. I shared an anecdote with him. I had a son who had chronic eczema. And anytime he ate pasta or bread, he would get outbreaks on his whole body, and they were excruciating for him. He went to University of Bologna for a year, and he ate spaghetti 3 times a day. He never had an outbreak. His eczema disappeared. And this, what we're doing to our children is criminal. And we have to stop. We are now the sickest country in the world. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60%.
Let's go back a little bit.
We are the sickest country in the world. As I said, nutrient anemic. We're now the fourth most obese. Bodies are not designed to metabolize them. And your body is seeking the nutrients that go along with that taste, but there are no nutrients. Our food today, it used to be nutrient dense. Today it's nutrient barren. And your body craves it. It's looking for the nutrients which it associates with those tastes. And that's why your body remains hungry all the time.
Right. My body, yeah. That's probably why, partially why, I have trouble where it's like midnight and I'm still hungry. But of course, we're eating good food. We're eating good stuff here. So, but I understand what he's talking about. But we have invested to make sure that we're eating good, organic, non-GMO, natural food. It's very costly, but it's definitely worth it. But and then my body craves it, and I want it more, and so we're spending more money on all this food, and the food just it does not last. So with the good food, yeah, you're going to spend a lot more money, but it's an investment in our health, and it's definitely worth it.
And so you eat more and more, you gain more and more weight, and you're never satisfied. They also developed a whole slew of other chemicals. For example, they learned that one of the ways that your brain tells your stomach that
I
it's
like this
full
one.
is it counts the number of times you chew.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So they began adding softeners to the food to trick your brain into never being able to tell your stomach that it's full. And using this, many other chemicals, they poisoned our food.
I mean, this is science. This is like the worst way to use science, where they're using science to trick your brain, to trick our bodies into thinking that, these bad foods are good food. And it's like, oh, it isn't that you're eating bad stuff. You're just hungry. You just eat more and more and more, instead of, saying, well, if you give those same people good foods and solid foods and organic food, natural food, they're not going to be hungry. Those are the tests. Those are the things. Those are the scientific studies that Kennedy is looking at. And he's looking at those other studies that discount that. And he's saying, we don't need your guys' studies. So he's defunding them. He's defunding the bad studies, defunding these scientists who are bought and paid for, and saying, let's we have no problem funding good science. Let's make sure that it is good science. That's all you can do. In his spot, I mean, this is he inherited a train wreck, right? So all that he can do is make things better. Make America healthy again.
Country, and they made it, as I said, nutrient anemic. We're now the fourth most obese country in the world.
How's that possible?
For the first time in history, we're seeing obesity and malnutrition in the same people. And Leo was talking about his trip to Europe. I shared an anecdote with him.
I like this.
I had a son who had chronic eczema. And anytime he ate pasta or bread, he would get outbreaks on his
Pasta and bread thing. The pasta and bread that they're giving us, that they're feeding us, how bad that stuff is. And then when you get off of it, and your body still kind of craves it because it's used to it. And we're trying. It's just the chemicals in this bad food it's somewhat similar to a person trying to get off drugs and trying to get off that bad stuff. And there is a learning curve here, I think.
whole body, and they were excruciating for him. He went to University of Bologna for a year, and he ate spaghetti 3 times a day. He never had an outbreak. His eczema disappeared.
How's that possible?
And what we're doing to our children is criminal. And we have to stop. We are now the sickest country in the world.
And his son, he's probably talking about a university that is outside of the USA, obviously, over somewhere overseas, probably in the UK. But I mean, why wouldn't we, like the other person that was talking previously, why wouldn't we, whatever the ingredients that is in our food in the USA, why shouldn't that be the same as the ingredients that our USA companies sell to other countries? Maybe this is going to help with the tariffs. Maybe this is part of that. But this is a deeper rooted issue. They're okay with poisoning the people in this country. It's almost like a punishment. And then, well, we're going to give healthy food to other countries. We're going to go by their regulations. But if there's no regulations in the USA, why should these USA companies, have to make good food here? Why wouldn't they just sell us bad stuff here? So that's the trade-off.
When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60% have chronic disease. We are the sickest country in the world. Our autism rates have now gone from 1 in 10,000 in my generation today, in 70-year-old men, to 1 in every 31 in my kids' generation. The diabetes rate has exploded. When I was a kid, an average pediatrician would see a single case of juvenile diabetes in a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic. Even more, 38% by the latest NIH numbers, which I just read. 38% of teens now are diabetic or pre-diabetic. 50% of our adult population. This affects everything in our country. It affects our national security. 74% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. When my uncle was president, we spent zero nationally on chronic disease. There were no treatments. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion a year. It is bankrupting our country. And this step that these brave legislators took, and I want to thank the Senate President who's here also. Will you just stand up? We finally have an opportunity to address this, and it's happening at the grassroots. People are saying, we are not going to take it anymore. We are not going to be mass poisoned by an industry that has captured our regulatory agencies. And this is what Leo was talking about. We have 10,000 ingredients in our foods, and the Europeans have 400. And that's because we have a captured regulatory agencies. They've captured our politicians. And I want to challenge the press. If you find a legislator or political leader in this state, go out and find one after this meeting who did not support the SNAP waiver legislation. Ask them why. Get them to offer you a rational explanation. I guarantee you they will not come up with one. Why are we paying for sugar drinks that are poisoning our kids and giving them diabetes? If you want a Coke, God bless you, go get one. But the taxpayer should not be paying that in a nutrition program. This is supplemental nutrition. There are no nutrients in that soda. There are none. And why are we paying for that? We should be paying for healthy. We're going to pay for it twice. We're going to pay for it now, and then we're going to pay for it with the diabetes bills later on. Oh, ask them to give you a rational explanation and then sit there and say that does not make any sense. What is the real reason that you voted against this bill? And do your investigation and find out how much money they are taking from the soda industry. And you look at all of these public health groups like the American Heart Association, that oppose this legislation. How can they do that? Ask them, how much money are you taking from the soda industry? This is clear cut. There is no reason to vote against this bill except for sheer corruption, because you've been bought off through a system of legalized bribery. And I'm very proud of these legislators and senators for standing up for the health of the people of Arizona.
Yep.
We need...
Yep. And look, they just needed Kennedy. It's all they needed was RFK Jr. to get up there and to say, hey, we got your back. We got your back. Do this. This is going to be good, for you politically, but really, he's been doing this for years. So it's like you're going to either, get in line, and these politicians, these local state people, they're just, well, if they push this, whatever they push on us, we'll go with. They push COVID regulations, the restrictions, the lockdowns, and they just went with them and they voted with them. So this is what you need. This is how government works. What RFK Jr. is doing is showing how you can have an effective and a prosperous and a promising government that works for the people. He's doing everything here. He can't do anything more. It's at this point, he's going to go. He's doing this tour. I wish he would do a 50-state tour. And maybe he will later on. I'm sure he will. I would be surprised. If he's challenged, maybe he will. If it's necessary. It's a big, big job. He's in charge of 82,000 people, employees, for various companies, industries that are uh, tiered down, right? All of this stuff. But the HHS is just this big, it's in control of this big umbrella. And so he's got a lot of work to do. It's like, why isn't RFK doing this? Why isn't he doing that? He's got a lot of things going on. And for him to do a tour like this, for him to get out there and do this at the state level really shows he understands these things need to be solved at the state level. And I'll come to your state and I'll help you guys out and I'll help you do it.
I want to thank President Trump. President Trump has promised to make America great again, and that means he has to make us strong. And we cannot be a strong nation if we do not have a strong people. If 60% of our people are killed, are sick, he's promised to restore to the American public the promise of the American dream. That a healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. And we have 60% of the people in this country today who only have one dream, and that's that they can make it through the day without discomfort, that they can survive to see their children grow. And we need to take care of these little ones. It is our obligation.
Amen.
It is the obligation of every member of this elected body.
We need to take care of these little ones. These little ones, when he goes like this and he's talking about these little ones, he's talking about all those kids. And not really cool with, putting kids on camera. I really don't like that. But they had this whole setup where they had all these children right in front, and there's children are right in front of them as they're talking. So all this is happening. Everything that we're seeing here, there's children right in front of them. And maybe that's how bad it is. Maybe that's how, they need to, it's kind of like that shield, but I don't know. I don't like that, but he's speaking directly to them. And these kids are hearing this. So these kids that are hearing this, they're going to understand later on. It's going to sink to understand how we make this country healthy again. And we need to. And Arizona is leading the way.
And let's call them to task when they don't do the obvious thing. This is easy. It's a no-brainer. And I'm very grateful to these legislators and very, very grateful to President Trump
Amen.
for allowing this to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So also joining us today is Maricopa County School Superintendent Shelley Boggs, and she has been a dedicated advocate for the well-being of our students and the future of our communities for quite some time now. So please, if you wouldn't mind making a few remarks.
Introduce yourself. You will ask one question relevant to
Okay,
your
here we
event.
go with the
Start with
questions.
Stephanie from
This is good
Arizona
stuff.
Public.
Here we go. The question.
Hi, Secretary. I wanted to know what your strategy is for
Here we
stopping
go.
the measles outbreak in Texas that continues to grow.
Our strategy
Now,
has been
remember,
very successful.
let me
There
just
are
say, they had already said, make sure you keep your questions relevant. Kitty has no problem answering these questions. If you ask him any question, he's going to answer it. He's gonna run right up there, and he's going to answer this question. There's going to be some kickback from the people that brought him here. It's like, whoa, I thought we were here to talk about this, but obviously, no. I mean, you have a person who is working right under Trump, who did the infamous handshake with Trump. I totally get it. Their handlers, their media, they're there. They want, they say, hey, you got a good opportunity. Go ask him these questions. They don't care what Kennedy just said. They have no interest in everything that he just said about how we help our children, how we make our country great again. They have no interest in that. That is not their job. This is another reason why from a young age I learned that, I used to want to be a journalist. I wanted to be a news reporter. I wanted to be all that. I learned from a very young age. It's just nonsense. It's just garbage. So that's why there's so many great podcasters out there, so many people that just do their own thing. These reporters that are sent there, they're sent there to ask. I don't blame them. They're sent there to ask these stupid questions that have nothing to do with anything that Kennedy is saying. They're not responding to what Kennedy is saying or to what he's doing here. They're talking about something in Texas. Nothing wrong with that. They disregard everything else Kennedy has said, which is fine. And so maybe he needs to be more out there, which I would love that, because you're going to hear the response from RFK Jr. And this response that you're going to hear is going to be very consistent.
640 cases now in
Let me go
Texas.
back a little bit.
Question relevant to this event. Let's start with Stephanie from Arizona Republic.
Is it relevant to this event? You be the judge.
Hi, Secretary. I wanted to know what your strategy is for stopping the measles outbreak in Texas that continues to grow.
Our strategy has been very successful. There are 640 cases now in Texas. The number continues to grow by the day, but the growth rate of the measles are 640 nationwide, about 440 in Texas.
640 nationwide.
Has diminished substantially.
They're acting like the measles thing is on the level of COVID or something. 640 wide. And we have 2 deaths. Every death is a tragedy. And so we need to understand that. But they're just like, I mean, their answer, what this lady is asking is, will you just force everybody to vaccinate? And Kennedy is like, we're not, vaccination, all that is not the answer. There is, this is a deeper rooted issue. So anyways, let me go back a little bit.
He has been very successful. There are 640 cases now in Texas. The number continues to grow by the day, but the growth rate of the measles are 640 nationwide, about 440 in Texas. The growth rate has diminished substantially.
There you go.
I would compare it to what's happening in Europe now, where we've had 640 cases here. They've had 127,000 cases and 37 deaths. And so what we're doing here in the United States is a model for the rest of the world.
Nice.
Thank you. Again, please make sure that the questions are relevant to the topic of the conversation today. Thank you.
They won't.
Associated Press.
They won't.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Secretary. You said on Sunday that
Here we go.
The MMR vaccine is the best way to prevent
Sir,
the spread of measles.
sir, I'm gonna go ahead and cut you off right there, because we're here to talk about what we're doing for these kids. No. Next.
Giving kids
No,
classes.
next
Secretary,
question.
will the CDC be doing
No,
the
next
vaccination efforts
question.
on the ground in West Texas?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley Rodriguez, Fox 10.
Hi, Secretary and Rep. A lot of the opponents of the MAHA agenda would say that you're not addressing the root causes, which are economic insecurity and food insecurity, economic inequality, underfunded public health systems. What would be your response to that?
My response is that this is a multifaceted etiology, and but the principal cause is the poisoning of our food system. Oh, epidemics don't happen for genetic reasons. Epidemics we're seeing them across socioeconomic barriers. We're seeing them everywhere, in every demographic. And the reason for that is our food. No health secretary in history has ever addressed that. And, everything else that people have done in the past is about deciding who's going to pay for the mess. Or whether we're going to have a public-private option, whether we're going to have Obamacare, whether we're going to have private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, and all of those are important debates to have. But ultimately, they're all about like moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. The ship is sinking. Americans are getting sicker. We are the sickest country on earth. We had the highest death rate during COVID of any nation in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. When CDC was asked, why did we have so many people killed, CDC said it's because we have the highest chronic disease burden on earth. The average American, according to CDC, who died from COVID and 3.8 chronic diseases. If we don't address this core reason, then everything else we do is just wormwood and bile. It's meaningless. We have to address this, and it's President Trump's priority that we do so.
A reminder, if your questions are not relevant to this event, they will not answer. Howie, come on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. My name is Howard Fisher. I'm a reporter with Capitol Media Service. I also have covered the legislature here since 1982 when I actually had hair, so it tells you how long I've been here.
Still got it pretty
I
good.
Oh, bless your heart.
Mileage up there.
I did attend the vote in the Senate this morning on these bills, and one of the questions that was raised about sodas, and I appreciate what you're saying about sugared sodas, is yet we're allowing parents to purchase heavily sugared cereals, all sorts of other things, snack bars, and everything else. I mean, where's the line in terms of what the government should be telling people on food stamps they can and cannot buy?
Well, you know, we're not going to solve the entire problem overnight. We have to start somewhere. About 10% of food stamps go to sugar drinks. And it's the quickest and most obvious thing to do. If you look at how much problem these legislatures had in pushing this bill through, it's just for a small category, but it is for the most relevant category, the most important category. The most obvious thing that we should do is to not be paying for this. Now, I want you to understand, if you want to drink a Coke or any kind of other bottled soda, you have an absolute right as an American to do that, and none of these people want to take that away. If you're spending nutritional money that is paid for by the taxpayer to make our kids healthy, and you're buying something unhealthy with it, and that needs to be corrected. Believe me, I would like to solve the entire processed food program, but we're not going to do that overnight. We're going to do it in the next 4 years.
And,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. Yes. Kim, Representative Biasucci is going to make a statement in regards to that as well.
On Howie, Howie, you're right. I can't believe I'm saying that, Howie. But you're
Wow.
right.
Somebody write it down. Yeah. Mark it on the calendar, Howie.
No, but Howie is correct, and I wish this bill for the SNAP side, including the school lunches, I wish it was larger. I wish it included more foods. But even in the SNAP bill with the soda, candy was actually part of that first. But we couldn't come to a definition on what did candy mean, what was it, is it granola bar candy? And the bill actually died, and we had to make changes. So although we want to get to that point, this place, everything is incremental, right? The legislature, you try to get what you can across the finish line. You need 31 in the House, you need 16 in the Senate, you need one governor to sign it. It's very, very difficult to get a bill signed. And so a lot of times you have to sacrifice your language, you have to make edits and make amendments to get it across the finish line. And this is what happened in this situation, to where I could have said, no, I'm going to keep candy, or I could have kept this or done this or added that. But the point was, I wanted to get the bill across the finish line. Because sometimes you need to have that impact. You need to make that change happen before the conversation continues in the future. And that's what I did with both of these bills. So, Howie, I agree with you. Like, should this be more foods? Absolutely. Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program. Nutrition's it's in the title. Mm-hmm. And so to think that we should be giving candy and soda and chips, that's not the design of the program. The design of the program was when a family's in need, and I am here to tell you right here that I will do whatever I can to help any family that's struggling. We all are at a point in our lives when we are struggling. And this is what the program's intended for, to get food on the table when a family's struggling. It's not intended to be what it has become, where now it's fast food and it's everything under the moon except for cigarettes and alcohol and dog food. We need to make change and do what's right for the people of this country and make them healthier. And that's what our goal is with these bills. So, thank you.
If I could just say, this bill is a beachhead. It's the beginning. We have to start somewhere. I wanted it to do more, but we have to do something and to get this thing passed. And I really compliment Representative Leo for pushing this. We have to, to move forward. My kids go to school here, and I'm a resident of Arizona for 5 years now. For a lot of kids, they get one meal a day. This will be the main meal that they eat. And that's a really tough thing to realize that this may be their one meal. We have to, as
This is a big point. I'm going to take off the closed captions here, but for what he's saying here, I mean, this is sad. I didn't understand this. This was, I don't want to go in too much of my personal life
That's
or
what our goal is
anything,
with these bills.
but
So, thank you.
if I could just
it's a very powerful thing what we are about to hear from Rob Schneider.
say that this
They introduce him. He's the comedian, but you know what? He's a father, and he's a human being. And so often, too often, have we treated celebrities as if they're not humans, if they're not people. Whether we like them, whether we don't, they're people. We can agree with them, we can disagree with them. I don't go after these people. Oh, they're just another Hollywood dude or whatever because they don't agree with what I say. That's not right. It's not good. That's not how Christ teaches us to be, to behave, to treat other people. That's not right. But I do love
bill is a
what
beachhead.
he's going to say.
It's the beginning.
And he
We
said,
have to start
"It's the beginning. It's not perfect." And you know what? The only thing that is perfect is Jesus Christ. That's it. There's nothing else that is going to be perfect.
somewhere. I wanted it to do more, but we have to do something and to get this thing passed. And I really compliment Representative Leo for pushing.
He's just, I don't know. I just, I saw him, saw his stand up on Fox. I wasn't impressed with it. It's not my style of comedy, but he seems like a very sincere person and a very sincere father. So
pushing this. We have to, to move forward. My kids go to school here, and I'm a resident of Arizona for 5 years now. For a lot of kids, they get one meal a day.
this is important. They get one meal a day. That's shocking to me. Now I was one of those kids, maybe, that could have been one of those kids in that stat. And I think I was blessed and privileged. My mom and my dad, they made sure that I had 3 meals every day. But a lot of the kids that I went to school with, maybe they didn't. It's back in the 90s. Maybe they didn't, They didn't have 3 meals. Maybe they weren't as privileged as I was. And look at this guy's face, He seems like a very sincere person. He's not getting paid to say this stuff, as far as I know. So, go on, Arizona.
This will be the main meal that they eat. And that's a really tough thing to realize that this may be their
The main meal that they eat, the one meal that these kids eat every day, is whatever the school can provide them. This needs to be Whole Foods. This needs to be Trader Joe's. This needs to be the farmer's market, the organic, the non-GMO. If you start here, start at this level and say, this is what we're going to make sure that our children have. That is going to spread like a spider web into the food industry. This is why Kennedy, Rob Schneider, and I forget the other people's name here on the dais, they are so focused here. They are creating a big spider web that is going to catch a lot of fire later on. And this is going to spread for what they are doing here. God bless them all.
their one meal. We have to, as Arizonans, we got to make that meal the best that we can for them. We certainly can't be poisoning them.
Absolutely.
We have to do that.
Yeah, we certainly can't be poisoning them because that's what is happening. They're poisoning our children. And the MAHA moms, and even if you're not a quote unquote MAHA mom, if you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you care about your children, you are a MAHA mom or a MAHA dad.
Hi, Secretary. Catherine Houghton with KFF Health News. I am wondering, regarding the bill that you all were just discussing, the Foundation for Government Accountability has been working to pass similar bills in other states since early 2024. I am wondering, have you talked with the head of the USDA about whether they would grant approval for those changes in those states? And also, what do you see as the Foundation's role in public assistant policy?
That's a good question.
I've had many conversations with Brooke Rollins. In fact, I attended last week a rally with Governor Morrissey in West Virginia with her. He passed a very similar bill in that state, a SNAP waiver bill, and signed it. And she has joined me in asking every governor in this country to apply for a waiver to USDA, and she will grant it.
And can you speak to the second half of that, of what you see as the Foundation for Government Accountability's role in helping shape public assistant policy?
I didn't get the question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What you see as the Foundation for Government Accountability's role in shaping public assistant policy on a state level, and Representative, if you want to speak to that as well, too.
Sure, I can, yeah.
Yeah,
So FGA, a great group that assist with a lot of different policies, a lot of different bills down here. They were behind the SNAP bill, including a bunch of other bills for government accountability. So, look, they're a great group, along with a lot of other great groups. We have, at the legislature, you get contacted by a ton of groups, a ton of policy people, a ton of think tanks that come to you with ideas. They are just one of them. They've done great work. Been happy to run legislation for them, but their main goal is, look, how do we become more efficient in government? How do we make sure we're not having wasteful spending, which is right in line with President Trump and obviously Secretary Kennedy and others in this administration. We want to make sure that government is working in an efficient manner, our dollars going as far as possible, and most importantly, our food is as healthy as it can be for our children. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
That's it. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone that's participated in the conversation.
In every situation, the cuts we made were administrative cuts, and they were redundancies. In some cases, we cut programs.
You too?
I'm very grateful to the legislature. I'm grateful to you, Jeanette, for your leadership, and Leo, and all the legislators who worked so hard to get this bill across the finish line. And again, I want to thank President Trump for his support and for sending me across the country to encourage people to do the same thing.
Perfect. And again, thank you guys so much. This is a great day for Arizona, a great day for our children. We're making lasting change. We're doing it for the right reasons. This is why you run for office right here. These are the moments that you run for office.
Yep.
Do this right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
So we got a couple victories there, and I'm glad to see that. Glad to see we have a few wins. And
That when we consolidated them into another program. So the task will continue. Their mission will continue. The people are still there for the most part.
Although I guess things get lost in the sauce, but I was looking for examples. The Novavax COVID vaccine, and that's not an mRNA vaccine, was expected to be approved by the FDA, but there's a delay. Why is there a delay? Is it just personnel being shuffled around? Why is that?
We're looking at that vaccine, and it is a single antigen vaccine. And For respiratory illnesses, the single antigen vaccines have never worked.
So it's not because of lack of personnel or lack of people?
I mean,
Okay.
we are actually shifting our priorities to multiple antigen vaccines, and NIH is already working on a number of those.
So that's the answer to that. I get that. Last week you said 20% of those fired were by mistake, and you knew that was going to happen. Do I have that right?
I didn't say that.
Okay, so tell me what you said or meant to say.
Yeah, that was a statement that that Elon made at the beginning.
There was like an 80% and 20%. What do you mean to say, so for the record?
What Elon said to us at the beginning and in our cabinet meeting, and I think it made a lot of mistakes, it made a lot of sense, is that when you do, our government, we're spending $2 trillion more than we have each year. Mm-hmm. And that's existential, and that's a public health issue. And we need to cut the size of the government and make it more efficient and make it do services more efficiently. HHS's job is to make America healthy, and we're spending $1.9 trillion a year, and people are not getting healthy. People are getting sicker and sicker.
So along those lines...
So what Elon said is that when you do a disruption of this, a lot of times, 80% of the people that get cut, and, my heart goes out to anybody who loses their job. It's heartbreaking for all of us. But it's something that has to be done if we're going to save our country and restore it. And he said that anytime you do a disruption like this, 80% of the people need to go. You may make mistakes as much as 20, and then you go back and remedy that and mitigate it.
So that brings up a question. What specific metrics is DOGE using to decide if a program is waste, fraud, or abuse?
Well, they have a very, very sophisticated group of people, and they have a very sophisticated systems for detecting fraud, waste, and abuse.
And yet 20% of the people who were cut, it turns out it was a mistake.
That was a hypothetical.
But a lot of people were fired and then rehired, right? So I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to imagine, and I've also, run a company in the past, wouldn't it have been better, or was thought given to, say, before firing them, going through and saying, what is that job? What is that job? Line by line by line, and saying, I think that person's job maybe isn't needed. This has to be eliminated.
That would have been another approach, and it's the approach that has failed for 60 years.
Because you mean it takes too long?
It takes too long, and you lose political momentum. You need to do this.
But there are some casualties, the 20%.
Yeah, and there are going to be casualties, and there's going to be mistakes. And what our job is, as we reconstitute this agency, make sure that those mistakes are rectified.
Good, and we're moving along nicely. So I want to go to the cuts to research and programs. You propose more than $11 billion in cuts to local and state programs addressing things like infectious disease, mental health, addiction, and childhood vaccination. Did you personally approve those cuts?
I'm not familiar with those cuts.
No, the cuts. He's not cutting. They act like he's gonna cut these good programs. No, he's cutting government waste that has not been working. Everything they've been doing. We're going to fight obesity. No, they're not fighting obesity. They are encouraging obesity. So they cut that. They're just saying we don't want fat shaming. No, it's okay to be fat. We're going to, be okay with that. They cut that. They're saying, well, okay, these things may cause people to be fat. Well, they got these drugs that all you do is just shoot it up and shoot it up here, shoot it up there. And, all of a sudden you're not fat. That's not good for you. That's what they are cutting. That's what they are fighting. RFK Jr., Secretary, HHS Secretary, RFK Jr., is doing so many great things. I don't think they understand it. But this doctor, real doctors, and this guy, they're like, okay, now I get it. So they're asking the real questions, and he's answering them, and it always seems to end the same way. They agree with RFK Jr.
We'd have to go We'd have to go.
There's like more than 50 pages of, of cuts that I actually went through.
The cuts were mainly DEI cuts, which the president.
There were a lot, but I'll give you, I actually, my eyes are blurry from going through them, and I understand because my eyes were blurry why you might not have seen every one of them. But
doctor's eyes that are blurry. Maybe wear some glasses.
For example, about 750, you talk about diabetes, adolescent diabetes, so important. About $750,000 of a University of Michigan grant into adolescent diabetes was cut. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, and that's something that we'll look at.
Yeah, so I mean, that's,
And Kennedy is saying that's something that we'll look at because he doesn't know if what this person is saying is true. He may be just saying it. They're like, oh, it got you, and it got you. But he doesn't know if that's true. He'll go back and he'll say, yeah, they got it right or they got it wrong. That's what Kennedy will do. This doctor is just like, he's reading off of a script. Okay, here we go. But Kennedy is going to he's going to absorb everything. Look at his face. He is going to absorb everything. Take it in. Ships it out.
I wonder, should these be considered Doge cuts?
Well, I couldn't speak to that, Dr. LeBuc, because I'm not familiar with that particular study, but there's a number of studies that were cut that came to our attention and that did not deserve to be cut, and we reinstated them. Our purpose is not to reduce any level of scientific research that's important.
So that's I'm so glad you said that, because figuring out what's important is tough, right? Because you may not know at the time you're doing basic research what will end up being super important later on. For example, a discovery made in 1970 ended up leading to the monoclonal antibody therapy against COVID that helped save the life of President Trump 50 years later. So, if at the time he rolled into the emergency room, somebody said, oh, I have an idea, let's have an antibody sop up the virus, it's way too late. You need decades of research. So how do you plan to ensure today's cuts won't mean decades in the future somebody will end up not getting the kind of care they could have had if the research was done?
That virtue, you should just fund everything and hope for the best that, 50 years from now that the discovery.
Well, no, but at least you go line item by line item and say, diabetes research.
We're trying to target problems that we have in our society today that are very obvious, which is chronic disease. And we're trying to, and in infectious disease. And we're trying to target our cuts, or are targeting our funding, or to actually solving that problem. And we're reorienting, recalibrating our course. And we look at everything and say, is this designed to make, is this likely to make America healthy? And you have to do that. Anybody who's funding research makes those decisions.
And it's tough, right? Because you know as well as anybody, I would think, that you just may not know. If you go back to 1970, there's a plasma cell that we can fiddle around with to make it make one type of antibody. Why would anybody want to do that? Cut.
So he's really trying to get the cuts that are tied to President Trump. I don't know.
And then it turns out 50 years later, it ends up helping to save the life of President Trump. So I think
President Trump was not on the ER. There was no symptoms. There was no reason to think that, President Trump had COVID. So all of a sudden, there's like the president is dying or anything. That's what this doctor wants Kennedy to think. Kennedy ain't buying it. He's not buying it. Here's what he says.
What's it like for you in this position to be making those kind of, life and death decisions now?
Luckily, I have.
These aren't life and death decisions.
Extraordinarily talented group of people, probably the most talented people who have ever worked at NIH. Jay Bhattacharya, who was at Stanford, Marty McCary, who's running FDA, who came to us from Johns Hopkins. These are among the top researchers and doctors in the world.
So those are the people you're going to be talking with? Who are you talking with?
I talk with them every day.
With them every day?
I talk with them every day, and they share my aspirations and President Trump's aspirations that we want to do. We want to make sure that America remains the hub of scientific research in the world.
2 Louisiana babies have died of pertussis. That prompted Senator Cassidy to tweet, and I'm reading this because I want to get it exactly right. No child in Louisiana should die from a vaccine-preventable disease. Please protect your child with a vaccine. Would you consider making a similar statement?
Well, the pertussis vaccine is,
No, he's just saying about a vaccine. Just would you consider making a statement saying, please protect your child with vaccine, even if you want to say specifically the measles vaccine, and because there is a measles.
Well, I would say definitely so for the measles vaccine.
Because you see where I'm getting at, right?
We need good science on all the vaccines. There's some vaccines, like the pertussis vaccine, that don't prevent transmission, and there are that in some.
So this host really wants Kennedy to just say, well, let's just go with all vaccines, right? All vaccines or no vaccines. It's not that simple.
Some ways can be dangerous too, because what can happen is that people do not get become symptomatic. Do not get in some ways, like the pertussis. Good science on all the vaccines. There's some vaccines, like the pertussis vaccine, that don't prevent transmission, and there are that in some ways can be dangerous too, because what can happen is that people do not get become symptomatic. And yet they're capable of spreading it.
I understand that. It's one thing, though. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I know we have like 20 minutes, and I want to just make sure I get through, and I want to get back to food. It's one thing to say the measles vaccine is the best way of preventing spread, but it's another thing to then say, and therefore, we suggest that you get the measles vaccine.
We encourage people to get the measles vaccine.
Okay, so I think that's actually the next step, and that's news as far as I'm concerned, that you're saying that, because there's the issue of the federal government. We talked about this earlier when we were talking about food, that what's the position philosophically of the federal government in terms of public health?
The federal government's position, my position is people should get the measles vaccine, but the government should not be mandating.
Understand, when not, and the same thing we talked about food.
I've always said during my campaign and every part.
And they never talk about that, where it's like, well, yeah, we should do this, but it should not be mandated. You should not be able to mandate this. If people want to get it, get it. If you want the vaccine, get it. If you want this, get it. But it should not be mandated. People should not be forced to get it. What's wrong with that? I don't understand why people have such a hard time with that. They say, well, that's everyone we should force it onto people. They don't want to force other things onto people. You can't have it both ways. Does not work like that. Okay.
Every public statement I've made, I'm not going to take people's vaccines away from them. What I'm going to do is make sure that we have good science so that people can make an informed choice. And we are doing that science today so that we know the risks of that product, and we also know what the benefits are. And right now, we don't know.
Preventable.
Sorry.
Now, we don't know the risks of many of these products because they're not safety tested.
And I understand that position, but just to be clear, you are saying, and we do on the federal level, and you personally do recommend that people get the measles vaccine.
They want.
And when I say they're not,
they want to make sure. Oh, you do want this. You do want that. They have an agenda. Their agenda is not truth. Let's not figure out what's going on. Their agenda is not saying, hey, let's make sure that we understand, why we are where we are. No, it's just do boom, 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 boom. A, B, C, D. That's it. They do not want to even question any of the things. They just want Kennedy to say, oh, now you agree with the measles vaccine. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we go to all vaccines, right? It's just, I don't know. It's wild. That's just me.
Safety tested, what I mean is they're not adequately. Many of the vaccines are tested for only 3 or 4 days with no placebo.
Yeah, they're tested for 3 or 4 days. That's it. But they want they want Kennedy to say, "Hey, give everybody these vaccines, give it them all, and that's it." They want it with no question. It's crazy, my friends. Okay, God bless you all. Until next time, remember Jesus Christ loved you, and so do I.